Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Developer Preview Live Summer 21. We're excited to have everyone here with us today. My name is Michelle Forte. I am a Principal Solutions Engineer here at Salesforce and your MC for the next hour. I'm joined by product managers and advocates who will be bringing you up to speed on the upcoming release. Be sure to ask us your questions by tweeting at Salesforce Devs with the hashtag Salesforce Live. We'll be answering them at the end of the broadcast, so stay tuned. We've got a lot here for you today, and we'll be talking about forward-looking features. Please make any and all purchasing decisions based on what is currently available on the platform and not any forward-looking statements I or any of the presenters might make today. Thank you. So today we have Zach, a product manager on Experience Cloud. He'll be walking us through what's new with Lightning Web Runtime for Experience Cloud. Next, we have Chris Harrison, Director of Product Management, who will give us a scoop on APIs and external services. Then we have developer advocate Stefan is going to walk us through Quick Actions and Lightning Web Components. Finally, Product Manager Neha will be updating us on what's happening in Sandbox Source Tracking. But that's enough for me for now. I'll see you at the end of all of this amazing content for Q&A. Zach, take it away.
Thanks, Michelle. My name is Zach Hotoff, and I am a Senior Product Manager on the Salesforce Experience Cloud. If you're an avid Release Readiness Live viewer, then you probably recognize me from spring when I introduced the GA of Lightning Web Runtime for Experience Cloud. Well, here's my encore to show you some incredible new features on the platform and give you an update on how we have opened up the product to even more of our customers. First, we're going to back up and talk about what kicked off this whole journey. Before we were the Salesforce Experience Cloud, we started our days as the Community Cloud. We tackled a myriad of use cases, including, but not limited to, self-service, partner relationship management, and B2B commerce. As we've grown, we've recognized the need to take on not just B2B use cases, but truly consumer scale and performance. Whether it's websites, mobile apps, or even commerce storefronts, we've grown the platform to capture even more value for our customers. That's why we started building Lightning Web Runtime for Experience Cloud over 3 years ago. We took a page out of the Lightning Web Components playbook and built a platform that is ES-Next standards-based, supports modern tooling, and is incredibly developer-centric. But at the same time, we wanted to ensure it was platform-first and secure so you could safely use your CRM and CMS data at scale. Lightning Web Runtime, or LWR, plays into the entire Salesforce platform story. Use the Salesforce design system to build components with your company's look and feel. Lightning Web Components, the building blocks for all of your UI. Lightning Web Security, and the latest innovations of a more flexible Lightning Locker. Salesforce Functions to build scalable serverless functions. And Lightning Web Runtime, powering this plug-and-play system for building incredibly performant front-end experiences. If you've already started your LWR journey, then this is the slide you've been waiting for. This release, the Build Your Own LWR template, will be available to all Experience Cloud SKUs. Now anyone who has Experience Cloud enabled can build performant, scalable experiences for you or your customers. And if you're looking for new feature functionality, look no further. We completely reimagined the branding experience for LWR, leveraging Css Variables for both programmatic and declarative controls. Okay, now let's see the demo in action. Welcome to our Salesforce Energy site, and you guessed it, it's running on our performant Lightning Web Runtime platform and built using the Build Your Own LWR template. As you can see, we allow you to build that pixel-perfect experience with the design system of your choice. We will now jump into the Experience Builder to show you how we were able to quickly build this site. This is the same Experience Builder we use to develop our Aura-based experience sites today. Before I show off our latest innovations, I want to do a very quick harbor tour of some of our past LWR enhancements. Whether you're building a CRM experience around Salesforce objects or trying to build professional blogs with Salesforce CMS, we have multiple different ways to build repeatable content. Here you can use standard pages, object pages, and CMS content pages. I also want to show off one of my personal favorite features from Spring. Connecting your components directly to CMS data is easier than ever with our new LWC property. You can build a component once and reuse it with varying pieces of content. Okay, let's go see the new stuff for this release. Here I've created a single component using our HTML editor. Let's open it up and see what's going on under the hood. We'll start with the logo component. On top of all the amazing work that the new Salesforce Design System variables have brought us, the Experience Cloud has added additional variables to make your site building even easier. Here you can see a CSS variable that allows you to pull in the logo component directly from an Experience Builder configuration. Awesome. And below you might notice a smattering of DXP and SLDS prefix classes. Well, these toggles allow you to build incredibly flexible experiences with just a few clicks. Let's hop out of here and I'll show you. With our brand new theme editor, you can now control the colors, images, text, and spacing of the entire experience. We'll start with images. Here's where I'm able to configure the logo that you saw within my HTML component. We can also set the browser favicon from here. Now let's check out text. Those SLDS and DXP classes on each element of the component are connected through various CSS variables. Let's test it out on the large heading by giving it some pizzazz. We'll make it italic and update the text decoration. And look at that. Pretty neat how quickly we altered an SLDS class. And because all of our base components leverage SLDS, you can now update the look and feel of Salesforce's base components. I'll pause for a moment to let that sink in. It's pretty cool. And on to spacing. With our spacing toggles, you are now able to control the page spacing. So whether you're on your Samsung Galaxy or one of those new iMacs, you can now ensure some consistency across site and component spacing. Okay, but how about color? Oh, I thought you would never ask. Well, let's jump out of this panel so I can show you some magic. If I grab our HTML component and drag it into this section that I pre-built right here, well, look at that. We were able to update the color CSS variables to introduce dark mode. And I'm no different than any other dev. I also love dark mode. But let's see how we can set up a different brand that I've named Greta. Here I have defined my primary colors, and using a bit of CSS magic, we can generate all sorts of CSS variables for your color and variants to alter your site's look and feel. The best part is each of these variables is programmatically overridable if you ever want to fine-tune the details of your site. Let's drag our component in and see how it looks. Not too shabby. Now imagine if a real designer was doing this instead of a PM like me. So today you learned that LWR is opening up to all Experience Cloud users and got to see our biggest summer deliverable with declarative branding. But be sure to catch the Experience Cloud session for all of our other features within both the Experience Builder and Salesforce CMS. And while I have you here, be sure to sign up for Trailhead DX, where you will see even more LWR for Experience Cloud. So today you learned that LWR is opening up to all Experience Cloud users and got to see our biggest summer deliverable with declarative branding. But be sure to catch the Experience Cloud session for all of our other features within both the Experience Builder and Salesforce CMS. And while I have you here, be sure to sign up for Trailhead DX, where you will see even more LWR for Experience Cloud. And that's it from me. Now over to Chris.
All right, thanks, Zach. My name is Chris Harrison. I'm a product manager in our platform services area, and I'm here to talk to you about two exciting updates coming in the integration space. The common theme for them both is out with the old and in with the new. And let's start by talking about APIs. Salesforce launches new API features and functionality with each major release. And each major release results in a new version of the API. The latest is version 52. We've been on this cadence for many years, and at present, upwards of 45 distinct API versions are currently supported. That is, until summer 21. Back in November of 2019, we announced the latest round of version retirements for core Salesforce SOAP, Bulk, and REST APIs. The Summer 21 release is the first of two major milestones for this retirement program, the end of support for versions 7 through 20 of the API. That means any issues encountered when making calls into the core Salesforce application against versions 7 through 20 of the SOAP, Bulk, or REST API will not be supported. Only versions 21 and higher will be supported. In next summer's release, Summer 22, versions 7 through 20 will be gone, and requests to these APIs will fail. In addition, versions 21 through 30 will then enter a deprecated state and will not be supported. And then, you guessed it, those versions will also be gone the following summer, and so on. As a reminder, the policy posted in our developer guides commits to supporting each API version for a minimum of 3 years from the date of first release. And before you ask, this policy and the retirement programs I'm describing do not apply to Apex classes. There's another Chris who manages all that business. The last retirement for APIs was back in the Winter 19 release, which removed version 6 and older from the platform. Moving forward, we're planning to consistently retire API versions each summer release through the same multi-step approach. Announce affected versions and support around 18 months later during a summer release, and then shut down access the summer release after that. Salesforce retires features when usage is low and when better, more secure replacements are available to adopt instead. This allows our teams to redirect resources required to maintain this older technology toward investing in new capabilities, like what I'm about to show you. In the REST API response header, you'll notice a new warning field. This information will indicate if something about the API call warrants attention in a manner the status code did not allow for. Thanks, RFC 7234. We'll look to add the same warning information to the SOAP API in a future major release as a versioned change. Even before these recent version retirement programs kicked off, we received consistent feedback that keeping track of API request activity is a challenging and costly enterprise. There's an old 7 days API activity report that you can only get to in Classic. There's a counter in setup. There's the wonderful limits REST resource, and there are some paid solutions out there as well. Each serve a purpose, but with varying levels of detail. In order to better support customers who are managing the impact of the version retirements, as well as get a consolidated view of API activity, we're launching a new free event log file focused on API usage. Let's see how it works. Here I am in my org. I'll navigate to setup and then check out what's new and notable in the release updates area. Scrolling down, I see updates regarding the 2 upcoming API version retirements. Clicking View Details, I can access more information about the retirement and click through to a knowledge article with specific steps to take in order to manage the API request activity in my org. The latest resource to help stay on top of these API requests is the new API Total Usage event in Summer 21. Now, I recently made a number of requests to this org via Postman with legacy versions in the endpoints, including SOAP login, Bulk API, and a number of REST resources. Using the handy-dandy, trusty-dusty event log file browser, I can quickly access events, download the data, and analyze the API activity. I can also use the Salesforce CLI and the REST API to script the retrieval of event log file records and data so I can build up a collection of API activity locally as event files are generated each day. This initial launch of the API Total Usage event is limited to a handful of common fields shared across the API families and restricted to requests made to versions 30 and below to support the retirement programs. We'll enrich this event with more data in future releases. In the meantime, Please connect with these resources to learn more. 3 summers ago, back in 2018, we made external services generally available on the Salesforce platform. This summer, we're shipping the biggest payload of improvements to the product ever. External services allows you to harness open API standards to create declarative building blocks of integration goodness without writing a single line of code. We use open API specifications to codify and catalyze the creation of actions that invoke functionality in other systems from within Salesforce, providing a useful tool to help you automate anything and integrate everything. In summer 21, we've enhanced external services so you can seamlessly integrate with more third-party platforms via their published APIs without having to manually edit the specifications before registering. We have relaxed, or in some cases eliminated, a number of the considerations that have been needing to be managed while working with external services. And this is only the beginning. Here's a brief overview of what's improved. First, we're GAing a new UI that has only been available in closed pilot, and it'll allow you to more efficiently activate API actions for your flows. In addition, we're providing support for larger specification sizes. The current limit of 100,000 characters is being raised to 1.5 megabytes. We've also addressed some underlying platform limitations that previously resulted in errors being thrown when attempting to register schemas that featured lengthy property names or deeply nested data models. The OpenAPI keywords of all of and additional properties will now successfully persist in an external services registration, and the platform is better able to handle other schema constructs as well. Please check out the Summer 21 release notes for all the specifics. Now let's see how all these improvements come together in a demo. Today, I'm going to register Slack's entire web API as an external service in Salesforce. This API is described with an OpenAPI 2 spec that is a touch over a megabyte in size and features over 170 operations, with a schema loaded with usage of additional properties. If I wanted to set any of these operations up as invocable actions through external services in the past, I would have had to shrink down and modify the spec to work around the previous considerations and constraints. I've already set up the required auth provider and name credentials for Slack in setup. You can see some detailed information about how to do this over at unofficialsf.com. Now I will navigate to the updated external services experience to register the Slack spec, which I've already loaded into my computer's clipboard. I provide a name for the registration, a description, and then I toggle to paste in the full spec itself. I hit save to initiate the registration process. External services is now processing the entire spec to model out the metadata and actions that will serve as the declarative building blocks to drive that process automation goodness on the platform. I'm interested in the operation to post a Slack message to a channel. So I'm going to choose that action from this new wizard experience. Now that the registration is complete, I'll move over to Flow Builder to try it out. I create a new flow and drop an action onto the layout here. Now I search for the Slack action I just registered in external services. There are 2 key inputs for the Slack action: the channel name I want to post to and the text of the message. Name credentials takes care of the authentication in the callout. Now I save that action definition, connect the flow, and try things out in debug. And there's my post in Slack. This workflow with the Slack API has been demonstrated a few times over the years in external services, but not without extensive editing of the input spec before registrations. So that's a brief example of the more streamlined integration workflow now possible with external services. Again, please review the release notes and the updated documentation for all the details, including a final update regarding the retirement of the original legacy version of an external services. There are more improvements coming in future releases. One of the areas of scope we're working on is to support OpenAPI 3 specifications, which is currently in a closed pilot. We're also launching a new pilot in summer 21 that's focused on MuleSoft hosted APIs. If you'd like to get early access to these pilot features, please let your account team know. And please keep the feedback coming on the external services Trailblazer community. So that's all I've got. I'm going to hand it over to Stefan for your next update.
Thank you, Chris, for that great update. Hi, everyone. My name is Stefan Chandler Garcia, a developer advocate here at Salesforce. Today, we're going to be talking about a very long-awaited feature with Lightning Web Components, and those are Lwc Quick Actions. On top of that, we're also going to take a quick look at some new Lwc features. As of the Summer 21 release, we can now use Lightning Web Components as quick actions. While we have been able to do this with Aura components for a while now, this new implementation brings lots of great capabilities. First off, there are two types of Lwc Quick Actions: Screen Actions and Headless Actions. Screen Actions are very similar to what you may have experienced in the past as a standard quick action. It takes a Lightning Web component and opens it up in a modal on the page. You can make your Lwc available as an action by setting the target to Lightning Record Action, and then setting the action type to Screen Action. While Screen Actions are a huge step forward for Lwcs, I'm incredibly excited for Headless Actions. They allow you to run JavaScript directly from the click of a button on a record. This must sound very familiar to some of our developers who started out in Classic. You can create a headless Lightning Web component and expose it to the action by setting the target as Lightning Record Action, with an action type of Action. This is what makes the difference between the headless actions and the screen actions. It's worth noting that currently Lwc actions are only supported on record pages. However, there will be more targets released in the future. So starting out with our standard Lwc screen action, you can really just take any Lightning Web component that you've created and expose it as a modal directly on any record page. It really helps create a visual and interactive experience for your users without having to have the components always visible on the page. What's really cool about these, though, is that they allow you to maintain the record context on the page just as if the component was sitting in a Lightning page. Though, by default, there is no header and footer on the component. It will display whatever you have within your template, while in one ways deviates from the standard look and feel of Salesforce, but will be able to allow you to create highly customized components for your users. Now, if you would like the modal to fit in with the rest of the UI, we're introducing a new base component for quick actions, the Lightning Action panel, which allows you to easily add the header and footer to your screen action. You can add a title to the component, which exposes the text in that modal header, and then you can use a slot to expose whatever content or components you'd like to put in the footer. In this case, things like buttons, links, and other functionality. This really helps garner the standard look and feel of a quick action without all of the boilerplate that's usually necessary. The last thing you need to know about screen actions is the close action screen event. There are many times in your component's lifecycle that you may want to close the window. For example, when you'd like to perform a save operation, the record's been committed and you need to close the modal, or if you just need to close it from a button on your component. You can implement the close action screen event and quickly dispatch the event to close the modal. So now that you have a general understanding of how screen actions work, let's go ahead and build one. We're going to be using the e-bikes sample app from the Trailhead sample gallery to get started. Let's pretend that a customer needs their e-bike repaired and a case has been created in Salesforce. We can then use a quick action to find a nearby service center and assign it to the case, while using all of the great features provided by the Lwc framework. So over in VS Code, let's go ahead and take a look at our Service Center action Lightning Web component. So starting out in our JavaScript file, you can see here we're taking advantage of a number of Lightning component services. We're using the API and track decorators. We're using the show toast event. We're calling Apex and using the update record method from Lightning Data Services. The first thing we need to do to use this LWC as an action is import that close action screen event that we were just talking about so that we can close the modal. While this is not necessarily required, it will ensure that your users have a consistent experience with standard quick actions. We are then going to just write a close screen method here so that we can reuse it across our component. Then, to close the action, all that we have to do is write this.dispatch event and then instantiate that new close action screen event that we've imported so that we can dispatch it. It's that simple. Once that event has been fired, the modal will close. It's a very similar pattern to the way that we fire events through Lightning Web Components in the first place. Now, looking at the rest of the component, you can see here that we're going to get a list of service centers from Apex. We're then going to normalize that result into the map markers for us to display into that Lightning Map component. Then, once a service center has been selected, we're going to go ahead and use Lightning Data Services again to update the current case. And so once that's been created, let's go ahead and add in that close method here so that we can close that modal on success. And there we go. We can go ahead and achieve that. So now that we've updated our JavaScript, let's write out our HTML template. The first thing we want to do is use the Lightning Quick Action panel component to create the modal look and feel for us. We're going to just set the title on this to Find Service Centers. And for now, we'll just use a placeholder for the body and create the footer. We can set that footer through a slot and then just add in the footer's buttons. We'll start out with the cancel button. Give it a name, a label, and then on click of that button, we're going to call that close screen method that we've just created to close the modal. And then next, we're going to go ahead and add in the save button, give that one a name and a label. And then on click of that button, we're going to be calling that update case method that uses Lightning Data Services and then closes the modal as well. So now let's go ahead and look at the body. We're going to go ahead and conditionally render the map once those map markers have been populated. And then we're going to add in our Lightning Map base component and pass in the map markers. And then on click of that component, we're going to go ahead and set our selected marker ID so that we know which marker to update in the case. So that when that save button gets clicked, we're going to go ahead and grab that marker and through Lightning Data Services, update the record that we're currently viewing. Now, before our component becomes available, we must first go into the JS meta file. You can see I've already added in the target pointing to our Lightning record action and then our action type of screen action. Now, it's very important that you use the correct action type as it can't be changed once you've implemented the action. So now that all that code's been written, let's go ahead and go into Salesforce and see what it looks like. So looking at this page here, you can see we just have a standard case that was created because Rosa's e-bike is no longer charging. In the list of actions at the top of the record, you can see that we have our Find Service Center action that I've already gone ahead and added to the page. When I click on the action, you can see that it will open up our LWC and display a map of the service centers. You can also notice that it's created the modal header for us with the title, and there's the footer, all created using that base component. Now, when I click cancel, you'll see that immediately the component is firing that close action screen event and closing the modal. So let's go ahead and open it again so that we can update the case. You can see here we have our service centers. Let's go ahead and select one. And then click Save. And as it saves, you can see we've updated the case, we've closed the modal, and you can see the quick action has successfully updated that record. So now, let's take a look at Headless Actions. These are exposed through headless Lightning Web Components. And like I mentioned earlier, they allow you to write JavaScript that can be triggered directly from a quick action. And what makes these really powerful is that you can use all of these modules available within Lightning Web Components to enhance the user experience and the productivity as a developer. You can perform CRUD operations on records using Apex or Lightning Data Services. You can navigate to other pages using Lightning Navigation Service, and even communicate with other components on the page using Lightning Message Service. To execute a headless action, all you have to do is add in the invoke method to your component and expose it publicly. This will run each time the action button is selected. It's worth noting that the component is inserted into the DOM immediately on page load. So any wire adapters, your connected callback, all will run immediately on page load, so you can't rely on those for triggering the action, which is why that invoke method is very important. So let's go ahead and look at how we can use a headless action. We're going to again use our e-bikes example by taking our case and creating a work order so that we can assign that to that service center and make sure that Rose's bike gets fixed quickly. So over here in VS Code, the first thing that I want to point out is that this LWC only has a JavaScript file and a JS meta file. As there's no UI, we don't need our HTML file. Looking at our JavaScript file, we're using a number of Lightning services. First, we're going to use Lightning Data Service to get the details of that case record. This wire is going to run, like I said, immediately on page load. Then, when the action is executed, we want to create the work order using Lightning Data Services, and then we want to use Lightning Navigation to navigate to that new record. So, in order to invoke the create work order method that we've written, we need to create a public invoke method to be called by our quick action. Then we can execute this .create work order. Next, we just have to go into our JS meta file and expose the component. Here you can see that we've set the action type to just action, whereas the standard quick action component was set to screen action. And like I said, I can't reiterate enough how important it is that you set it right the first time. And that's really all we need to do to use a headless Lightning Web component as an action. So let's go back into Salesforce and see what this looks like. And as you can see, we're already on our case record page. I've once again already added the action to the page for us, so let's go ahead and click the Generate Work Order action. And as you can see, it immediately executes the headless Lightning Web component, then created the record and navigated to the record. So there are so many cool things that I can't wait to do with headless actions and can't wait to see the awesome things that Salesforce developers can come up with. The last new feature that I want to point out today is that Lightning Web Components are now available in the setup audit trail. You can track information like who has updated a component, which component it was, and when that update took place. To check it out in your org, all you have to do is navigate to Setup and search for Setup Audit Trail in the Quick Find. Here, you'll see all the modifications that I've made to LWCs that I've demoed today.
Great, everyone. I hope that you're just as excited about LWC Quick Actions as I am. I can't wait to see all of the great things that you can come up with, especially when it comes to those headless actions. So if you have any questions, I'll go ahead and address them at the end of the session. But for now, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Neha.
Thank you, Stefan. Hello, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed learning about LWC Quick Actions. I am Neha Ehlawat, a product manager here at Salesforce, overlooking the areas of metadata and tooling APIs and source tracking. Some of you might remember me from my previous live call in Winter 21 around CLI plugin for custom metadata types. So let's talk about Sandbox Source Tracking. Before we dive into this topic, I want to talk about the two major development models that Salesforce devs usually follow. The programmatic org-based model has been a complex development model, and yet it's a common or a popular one. It is based off of sandboxes. You take all of your production data, take it all into a sandbox, and then develop against that. The interesting thing about this model is that oftentimes devs do not use source control and don't version the changes. This is not a great practice, and this is what we are trying to change with support for source tracking. The developers view the org itself as the source of truth in this model. So, for example, if a developer wants to work with an Apex class, they will just pull it from the Sandbox org to the local workspace, make changes, and push it back to the Sandbox, and clear the local workspace. And then there is the whole process of moving these changes to production, which is via chain sets. You can create chain sets and promote these changes to your upstream orgs, full sandbox, or production environments. It is easier than ever to build against source in a fully org-based or a sandbox-based development model, and with source tracking and DevOps Center, it will all become even simpler, allowing for greater collaboration across your teams in your trusted sandboxes. This model shows the release management process using a package development model. In this model, version control serves as the source of truth, containing all the metadata and configuration information for packages as well as the versions of those packages that are in development. In this ScratchOrg-based model, the end goal is to create a package. So all the source, metadata, everything gets bundled into this package. In the Lwr environments, developers iterate through changes and develop in ScratchOrg environments. They use source push, pull commands to synchronize changes made declaratively and programmatically in a ScratchOrg. When changes need to be promoted to build, test, or release environments, a package and package version are created from the metadata in source. An updated package version is installed to synchronize higher environments. UI-based chain sets are still available here for promoting changes that are not contained in a package version or that cannot be tracked in source. In this process, we have the ability to track changes in source through a test process that delivers quality feature releases. This model works closely with the source, and in the end, you are left with a package that can be deployed anywhere. Before we get into how source tracking can save time for developers, let's take a look at some of the pain points for devs. Manual tracking of changed components. As a developer or as an admin, you make a handful of configurational changes in your sandbox org, or you write a lot of code. Now you need to track the changed components via sticky notes or notepad to add them to the package.xml to be able to deploy it, retrieve it, or create chain sets and forward them to downstream orgs. To add to this complexity, the setup UI names for components and their metadata API names are not always the same. This is definitely not ideal in the automated world we live in. Collaboration can be a challenge. So whether it's an admin making configurational changes to your sandbox or another dev sharing the sandbox with you, it gets challenging to easily incorporate others' changes without source tracking. Even if the admin or the dev informs you of the changes, you still need to handcraft that package.xml to get them into your local workspace. Unidentified conflicts. You can potentially overwrite others' changes if you are deploying the same files touched by others in the sandbox. And then time-taking deploys for small tests. When working with Scratch orgs, the aim is to quickly run the tests or perform the QA and get the changes reviewed. Without source tracking, you still need to manually track the changes, deploy them every time you want to test something in a Scratch org. So how does source tracking tackle all of these pain points? Source tracking feature lets you automatically track changes between your local project and a remote org, whether it's a Scratch org or a sandbox. With Spring 21, source tracking is now generally available in all Developer and Developer Pro sandboxes, making it a snap to keep metadata changes synchronized. With this feature enabled, you can focus more on building your apps while Salesforce automatically tracks metadata changes between your local workspace and your org. By eliminating manual tracking of changes, whether it's via sticky notes or notepads, it reduces errors and automates the process. Simply use force source status command to see what has changed, and use source push or source pull to push or pull these changes between your local and remote. Easily identify what has changed in the sandbox. especially if other admins or devs are making changes to the same sandbox. Just use source status command to see the changes at a glance. Mix and match low-code and pro-code tools to make configurational changes in the org and write or edit code in local workspace, and leave it on us to keep these two synchronized. Now, this is one of the lesser known and understood benefits of the source tracking feature. But if you come to think of it, this is so powerful. Simply connect and authenticate as many orgs as you like to your local workspace. And you can use source push command to push changes to as many orgs from the same project just by specifying the right username of the org you're pushing to. You don't need to handcraft the package.xml and deploy to several different orgs or create change sets and forward them to these orgs. Okay, before we jump to the exciting part, the demo, some things to keep in mind around the availability of the feature. The feature is available in Developer and Developer Pro sandboxes only. To enable the feature, you need to enable the preference, enable source tracking in Developer and Developer Pro sandboxes from the DevHub page. In case you're not aware of the DevHub page, you can see how to navigate there in the demo in just a minute. The point to note is that once the pref is enabled, you either need to create a new sandbox or refresh an existing one to turn on the feature in the sandbox org and to be able to use it. There are no special or separate permissions needed to be able to use the feature. If you can access and edit a sandbox, you already have views set up and manage sandbox perms. You need customized application permission to enable source tracking preference in DevHub, which is a common admin perm. Just as a note, source tracking is enabled by default in all Scratch orgs. All right, enough of the what's and whys. Let's get into the hows of things and go over the demo. Okay, so this is my prod org, and if I go to setup and type DevHub in the left search bar, it will take me to the DevHub page. The pref used to enable source tracking is present on this page, which you can turn on to use the feature. Again, a reminder, after enabling the pref, you still need to either create a new sandbox or refresh an existing one to be able to use the feature. It shows enabled for me because I've already enabled it and created a new sandbox to save us all some time for the demo. Now I will authenticate the sandbox I created after enabling the pref with my local project via CLI. It's the same process as you authenticate any other org. One other thing we will do is to set this org's username as the default username via CLI so as to avoid providing the username with every command executed. You can authenticate as many orgs as you want in this step and keep changing the usernames with any source tracking command that you execute to move changes to different orgs without having to create change sets or deploying them every time. You can use the force source status command to check the status of your workspace and the org at any time, similar to how you run git status. So right now, my local and remote are in sync, so I should not see any changes when I execute the source status command. Now we will make some changes in our org and see how we can pull them into our local workspace. I already have a custom object called sample object created here. Let's go find that object in the object manager and go into the fields. I will change field level permission for the address field, similar to how an admin might make configurational changes. Let me also go ahead and create a new field called phone number and save it. Now let's go and see if these changes reflect in my local workspace. So it looks like I can see the changes on running the status command. Do note the column state in the results, which indicates the source of these changes. It currently says remote, which means the changes are coming from the remote org. So let's go ahead and pull these changes into our local workspace. Now we will verify if the changes made through successfully in our local project. And if they did, I should be able to see the field phone number's XML file inside the sample object's path. Okay, look at it, it did. So this is how you track and pull low-code changes to your local project. Now let's write some code. Let me go ahead and create some classes in our local project. Let's verify if it worked. Yep, I can see the classes in my project. All right, let's go ahead and push them into our sandbox now. Let's start by running the status command. Make sure they are the expected changes and there are no other changes. And then I will push these into my sandbox. Okay, let's verify if the classes made it through to the sandbox. Okay, look at that. My classes are available in the sandbox. If I now run the status command, my local and remote should be all synced up.
Well, thank you so much for watching the demo on source tracking. Back to you, Michelle.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the live Q&A today. Neha did have to step away, but don't worry, we have Avram joining us to cover any questions on Sandbox Source Tracking. Avram, would you like to do an intro?
Hi, I'm Avram Roy Faderman, and I'm the architect here at Salesforce for source tracking and the metadata and tooling APIs.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And don't worry, everyone, we still have Chris, Zach, and Stefan with us too. We're seeing some great questions flowing through our Twitter at Salesforce Dev with the hashtag Salesforce Live. So if you have any questions on what you saw from our amazing product managers and advocates, be sure to tweet us. We have great moderators that are consolidating questions to be asked. So let's start with the first question. I think, Zach, this one's for you. Which licenses do I need in order to get access to Lightning Web Runtime?
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked because that's a big change coming in summer. So in spring, Lightning Web Runtime for Experience Cloud was originally part of Salesforce CMS, but coming in summer, we're opening up the platform so that if you are just a general Experience Cloud customer, you can now get access to the template and start building your Lightning Web Runtime solutions today.
That's awesome to hear. I know some of my customers will love to hear that, especially with their Experience Cloud sites. Fantastic. All right, let's look at our next question. Looks like, Chris, this one's for you. What are some other examples of improvements in the APIs that are coming into this release?
Oh yeah, there's lots. I'll speak to a couple. So one is we've added support for the duplicate rule header in the REST API. That's a capability that until the summer release had only been available in the SOAP API. So covering some parity gaps there. We also made improvements to the Open API specification for the S-Objects REST API that we currently have in pilot. And we continue to make great progress in being able to generate an accurate and complete spec for these resources. So if you're part of the pilot, go generate the spec again once the release rolls out. And if you're not in the pilot and you're interested, reach out to your account teams. And as always, definitely dig into the release notes. There's lots of updates to the APIs to keep aware of.
Perfect. And I know I'll have a closeout with some more information about the release and how to dive into it. Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's look at this. Stefan, our next one's for you. Can I use any Lightning Web components as a quick action?
You can. So any of the components that you've already developed in your org can be exposed as quick actions. You just have to go into that JS meta file and add in that new target for record action. And then whether you'd like to use a screen action or just a headless action by putting in the action tag there. However, always keep in mind that the action is rendered in quite a small screen inside of that modal. So you can go in and adjust that, but always be aware that the component is in a different context. So ensure that everything that you're running clicks into those lifecycle hooks and is renderable in that smaller screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Looks like we have a live one for you, Avram. It's a packaging question for new security items. So how can we secure internal packages without having to create a PW each time?
So I have to admit, I'm not a big expert on packaging. I will, however, contact someone who is, and I see there is a tweet URL that I have access to. I'll respond to the tweet as soon as I've got that information.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Avram. Let's see, what else do we have here? Zach, we'll come back to you. Our team has spent a lot of time building Lightning Web Components for Aura. What do I need to do in order to migrate them to Lightning Web Runtime?
Yeah, that's another great question because we get that all the time. I think generally, like our mission has always been that if you build an LWC component, that it should work just as well in your Aura community as in your LWR community. I'm sorry, experience site. And we've done a lot of work and to make sure that that's kind of the case. However, there's always a few gotchas, so definitely be sure to test it. I would say overall 95% of the base components are going to work just as expected, but be sure to kind of check it out as you start moving.
All right. Stefan, this next one coming in live is for you. Do Lightning Web Components for Quick Actions work on mobile? And how will the modals display if so?
That's one, I'm gonna have to take that away and get back to you. I know the components themselves will need to be modified to render on a mobile device by just checking and making sure that you're using the proper screen size and screen widths in the Lightning design system. But I will verify how they render and if they render in the mobile app currently in this current release.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Stefan. Let's move on. Avram, another one for you. Is there a UI for source tracking that for orgs that haven't graduated to using SFDX CLI yet?
So I want to stress that this is a forward-looking statement, but under development.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So that is forward-looking. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Avram, we actually have a follow-up for you as well. Is there anything on the roadmap for downloading smaller time increments of the setup audit trail?
That's an interesting question. To my knowledge, no. It's an interesting idea, and I'll try to pass it to relevant people.
Okay, perfect. And that one's on Twitter as well, so you'd be able to respond directly from there as well. All right, Chris Harrison, more about APIs for you. Which REST APIs are included in the version retirement?
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of resources in the REST API. Anything that hangs off of services/data/v20 is going to be included in the retirement scope. So that includes S-objects, of course, query, search, tooling, chatter, connect, and more. So definitely check out your consumption and plan for that retirement.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Let's see. Stefan, back to LWCs. Can we use the Lightning Quick Action panel outside of Quick Actions?
So you actually can, in a lot of places where you might be creating your own modal components and you want to show pop-ups, the panel itself is just the actual modal container component that you can throw your header and footer into. So it's actually really, really cool for reducing the level of markup that you're having to bring into your components in boilerplate and just using that new quick action panel in a lot of places around your org.
Perfect. That's awesome. All right. Zach, back to you. Does this mean all solutions should be built within LWR? What do we do if with our existing Aura implementations?
In general, what we like to say is that LWR and Aura are going to live side by side for a long time. With LWR really focusing on some of those consumer grade solutions, and with Aura, there's a ton of out-of-the-box componentry and templates, and it really helps you go to market quickly. So as we kind of move along in the future, we see both solutions existing. alongside each other, and we'll find ways to kind of recommend to our customers and partners which direction to go based on certain solutions.
Great, that's fantastic. All right, looking for more here. Avram, back to you. Do we need package XML for deployment with Sandbox Source Tracking?
So no, if you're deploying to Sandbox, we actually, one of the features of source tracking is that we actually can figure out what changes you've made locally. And under the covers, SFDX, the CLI, will construct a package XML for you on the fly. So you'll never have to touch it. The same applies to retrieving. If you do a pull, you'll get things that have changed in your organization that you don't yet have on your client.
Awesome. So it seems like it's getting a little bit easier for everyone to see what's changed and kind of how to deploy it. That's fantastic.
That is indeed the intent. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So just remember, everybody, if you do have your questions, please tweet at Salesforce Devs with the hashtag Salesforce Live. We're coming in. We have a few minutes to go and a few questions that we're continuing to take. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Zach, I'm going to go back to the question that we followed up on earlier, but how can customers learn more about some of the considerations they should make that might exist with Lightning Web Components and Lightning Web Runtime?
Yeah, so we've done almost as much work on the content side as we've actually done on the product side. So we have a brand new section of our documentation all about how to get started with LWR for Experience Cloud. And within that content, we've been very clear to add in any sort of, gotchas or limitations. Basically, as we bring parity to the LWR platform, there are going to be some gaps with the existing Aura platform. So be sure to check out those pages to see what are the limitations as you begin your solution on LWR. So lots of great documentation there. Highly recommend checking it out.
Perfect. I will be bookmarking that and reading that later. I know that because my customers will ask me direct questions. All right, Chris, we're coming to you. When will Open API 3.0 support be available in external services?
We didn't ship enough in summer release. They asked for more. Gosh. No, OpenAPI 3 support for external services is something we have in pilot right now. And we're targeting either this coming winter release to GA that support or the spring release. So we want to make sure that that support is rock solid and continue on our strategy as a Salesforce platform to not only represent our APIs with an OpenAPI 3 spec, but also bring in other APIs into the core platform through external services. So we're working on it.
Working on it, and a forward-looking statement right there around OpenAPI 3.0 support. Perfect. And I do have a follow-up for you as well. Do I need to be an event monitoring customer to access the new API event?
Oh, no. So the cool thing that we did is in shipping this new event log file that's focused on consolidated API requests, that's available for free, like the other handful of log files with that one-day retention in all API-enabled orgs. So if you want to have longer data retention, that's where the event monitoring licensing comes in, but everyone has access to that one-day retention view of their API requests.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, let's move on. Stefan, I have another one for you. Can we use the connected callback in Lwc Quick Action?
So if you recall back to my slides earlier, the connected callback will always run with your components. However, it runs immediately on page load, because when the action is inserted into that DOM, your connected callback is going to run. So just be aware that it's running right on page load, not when you're actually opening up that modal itself. That's where we have that invoke method that comes into play. And when that button's clicked, we can then call on anything that we need to. That's then dependent on that actual instantiation of the modal when you're running your quick action, or if it's a headless action, the second you click that button will run the invoke. So yes, you can use it, but it takes effect immediately on page load.
Okay, Thank you, Stefan, for that. Looks like we have one from Twitter for Avram. With source tracking in place, how easy is it to sync to the GitHub repository?
Well, because you're syncing on your client side, it's actually as simple as using GitHub in any other circumstance. You're just pulling things in and out of GitHub. When you pull things from, for example, when you do a pull, you'll probably want to check the changes into GitHub. You can make changes, deal with them only in GitHub until you're ready to actually deploy them, and then do a push when you're done, as long as you also have those changes on your local system. So it's pretty straightforward. It's to the extent that there's nothing particularly special about integrating with Salesforce. It's like using GitHub for any other purpose.
Perfect. So it sounds like it's easy to use, easy to work with, simple as that.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm checking for additional questions that have come in. Avram, another one for you. How can admins and developers collaborate on a sandbox that has source tracking enabled?
Well, one thing that is useful about a sandbox that has source tracking enabled is that when changes are made in the user interface of the organization, the next pull will download those changes. So an admin who isn't particularly comfortable with working at the command line can make changes in the sandbox the same way they've always been making them. And then a developer can use a pull to get those changes synced to their local metadata, do whatever development work they want to do, and then push the developer enhancements back up.
Okay, perfect. That seems easy enough. All right, let's see. Chris Harrison, I have one for you. How do I get an extension for next summer's API version retirement?
Oh, spicy. So you'll want to contact your account team or customer success and have a discussion about what's needed in order to update your integrations and migrate to more current versions of the API. An extension will not be granted unless a detailed mitigation is in place. And keep in mind that this retirement has been announced for over 1.5 years, and any extension timeframe will be limited as we have another round of API versions that are going to be retired not long after. So it's going to be confined, and it's going to require a specific action plan in order to be accepted. One other note, we're working with communications to the partner community to make sure that they update their apps and consume more current versions of the API. But again, as you have those discussions with your partner teams, like, make them aware too. We're trying to get the word out as much as possible and continue on this cadence of retiring these older versions so that we can get people to the latest and greatest.
So I know earlier, Chris, that you showed some things on unofficial SF and Slack for auth. Can you just go over those real quick so that everyone knows, especially in trying to build their mitigation plans, how they can utilize those?
Well, so unofficialsf.com is a place for automation, not necessarily the API version retirement. So that came up during the external services talk, and that's a collaboration. That website is a collaboration amongst a number of trailblazers who are interested in automation. And there's a section on that blog that's dedicated to external services. And there's a specific post that's focused on the steps to authenticate to the Slack web API from a Salesforce org. So if you didn't catch it in the presentation, unofficialsf.com. There's lots of automation goodness on that blog.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Chris. And sorry, I definitely mixed the two with our API retirement and external services. You just had so much to cover.
I know.
So much in summer 21 for you. All right, Zach, we're back to you with LWRs. Does this mean all solutions should be built in LWR?
Yeah, so generally, I think, do we ask that one? Anyway, overall, with LWR and Aura, those are going to live side by side. So our big hope is that as we kind of build on LWR, we'll bring more parity to the existing Aura solutions. But for a long time, we'll be helping our customers and partners decide which solution to go with based on kind of the feature functionality.
Perfect. And we might have already asked that one, and I totally didn't realize it. So that is my apologies.
No worries. Always happy to drill it in repetition-wise.
Exactly. Okay. So let's move to Stefan. We have another one for you. Can I use quick actions in Global Publisher?
So currently, the quick actions are only available in record pages. However, it is on the roadmap to be able to include the Lwc Quick Actions in the Global Publisher. Safe harbor there.
Safe harbor, forward-looking statement.
Yep.
Love it, but I love the innovation that's coming so that we're able to pull even more in with quick actions. I know this is something that I'm probably going to try after this. All right, I think we have one more question, and we have probably a minute left. So if there's any last-minute questions, definitely get them in through Twitter at Salesforce Devs. But Avram, when will there be support for Sandbox Source Tracking for full copy Sandbox org?
So that is on our longer term roadmap. In the shorter term, though, we're working on performance improvements for the sandboxes we already support. So we're going to be looking at that before we get to looking at full copy sandboxes.
Perfect. So forward looking there, but performance first, and then we'll get to full copy sandboxes.
That's right.
Great. Well, I think, are there any other questions? Nope, it looks like that's what we're doing. That's what we got for today. But thank you, everyone. And thank you, Zach, Chris, Avram, and Stefan, for taking the time to share with our amazing community and on Summer 21. So it wraps our Q&A, but I do have one last thing to share with everybody before we go. So please, if you did enjoy this content and you want more content about this release, or you want to dive in deeper into all the features that we talked about today, please go to sforce.co/learnmore. You'll get access to 5 amazing blog posts that were all published over the last week and deep dive into specific features for developers with even example code. If you go to that link, it'll actually take you to a trail mix. And if you complete that trail mix between now and July 31st, you'll be entered to win a certification voucher. So I definitely recommend that you check it out to dive in deeper to all this amazing content and even learn more with Salesforce developers. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We've had an absolute blast answering all your questions. And we're going to stay answering them all on Twitter and the Trailblazer community. So keep them coming in. We'll even follow up on the ones that we haven't, that we wanted to follow up on through Twitter as well. And even after we ended, we'll make sure to get those answers. So thank you again and have a great rest of your day.